Representative Hall rise.
Speak on the bill the first time.
The gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this bill the first time. And I wanted to look at a couple of things and make it real simple, because we've made it a little bit more complicated in the discussion of this bill. We've created a special session, and we've all acknowledged, although we thought we were going to get a look at the bill last night, that we had an official 5-minute period to read the bill in the committee meeting today. Now, Representative Bishop made a big deal about the fact of all the different hoops and steps you would go through for a bill in this General Assembly to pass. Some people would call that partially due diligence. That's not what happened with this bill, though. Let's go back and review what happened. Folks got a look at this bill this morning, and we are here today on this floor. Didn't go to a second committee, didn't go to a third committee, didn't have a notice to public hearing on it, didn't have any of those protections. So let's not get confused what normally happens around here with what happened with this bill. Now, for some reason, we decided we had to have a special session. And yes, we're going to spend $42,000, but that's not the real cost of this bill. We know everybody in here. I don't know what your billing rate is, or what revenue or income you're sacrificing, or how much time it took you to get here, or what responsibilities you had in your community that you won't be able to discharge because you're here. But add that on top of the $42,000. That's the cost to your communities, your family, and our state for us to be here for a non-emergency. So we're here. And someone said this is an emergency, even though we're coming back on the 26th to do business, that this is an emergency, that we have to do all of that upheaval right now. Well, if it's an emergency, what is the standard for it to be an emergency session? We've done this twice. Once in 1981 when there was an error that we made in an adjournment resolution, and we had a member demanded session to come back and correct the adjournment resolution for the legislature. And this is the second time. So what makes this in the history of North Carolina so important that we should come back and use that, some people call it trickeration, but it is a legal methodology to call a session. So it's legal, and we can do it, and so we did it. But what made this rise to the level of being an emergency, that we have a special session? Now, 500,000 North Carolinians who could get health care if we increase our Medicaid, they might say, well, that's an emergency. 500,000 North Carolinians who should get health care? They may say that's an emergency. How about our teachers that are moving out of the state because they can't get paid a decent wage? They may say...
The general suspend. For what purpose does the lady from Surrey, Representative Stevens, rise?
Point of order. Are we sticking...
The lady may state her point of order.
Just are we sticking with the bill? Is this germane to the bill that's before us?
The lady's comments are duly taken by the chair. The chair would ask the gentleman to attempt to keep his remarks relevant to the bill at hand. I understand the chairman is trying to talk about other priorities, but in as much as possible, germane to the bill at hand. The gentleman does have the floor to continue debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I hope I'll be granted the latitude to speak about the process regarding the bill as well. I'll take that as a yes. So, what makes this be an important enough issue for us to call a special session? That is the discretion of the members who said this is important. The people of North Carolina didn't say it was important enough to do that. The teachers who are leaving the state because their salaries are not sufficient for their families to live and work in this state of North Carolina, they didn't say that. The people who want to improve education, they didn't say that. Why all of a sudden is it important this item?
Representative Hall, the gentleman will please suspend. For what purpose does the gentleman from Harnett, Representative Lewis, rise?
Point of order. I don't believe the gentleman is speaking on the merits contained within the House Bill 2, which is before the chamber.
The chair will in this case rule that the gentleman's comments have drifted pretty far astray from being germane to the bill. The gentleman will please contain his remarks germane to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as we talk about the bill, itself and not the process by how it got here. Apparently that's irrelevant that we created this situation. Then let's talk about the bill itself. What is the bill doing? Is it expressing the will of the people? Is it addressing the issues of most importance to the people? Let's talk about the companies and the business interests in the community that employ the local people who said they support by providing at their places of employment protection. Carolina's healthcare system, Wells Fargo, these are all private organizations, yes. And these are all organizations and businesses that work with the local community and do the very thing that Representative Dollar said local communities are supposed to do, provide and participate in economic development. The very thing we do when we provide incentives to companies to come to North Carolina. Wells Fargo, Walmart stores,
Just a
Bank of America.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Mecklenburg, Representative Bishop Price,
May I ask Representative Hall a question?
does the gentleman from Durham yield to the gentleman from Mecklenburg?
Well, it'd be my pleasure to yield as soon as I finish my comments.
He doesn't yield this time. The gentleman from Durham has the floor to continue debate.
And I would continue the list: Bank of America, Novant Health Systems, American Airlines, Food Lion, Harris Teeter Supermarkets, Lowe's Companies, Duke Energy Corporation, Apple, Siemens, AT&T, Microsoft, Bank of America, all organizations and businesses that help partner with us in the development of our state, contributing to the education of our children, developing a future that we all aspire to have North Carolinians have an opportunity to participate in, but yet and still their express preference by making their workplaces safe for all North Carolinians are being ignored. And so what would we expect that future companies would say, if all of our citizens can't be respected, our valued employees can't be treated fairly, then they won't come to North Carolina and take a risk on that. Gets even worse though, because when you think about it, South Carolina bests us again. Can you believe it? South Carolina has enough sense to be inclusive, and North Carolina, once again, we're getting our lunch eaten by South Carolina over and over. The fiscal note that was talked about, if you don't have a fiscal note, how are we going to make a responsible decision about this bill? What is it really costing us? I heard Representative Dollar say, well, we're going to have funding available, although it's under a continuation review. It's not in this bill that guarantees there will be funding there. There's nothing in the bill that says that. In the answer today to the committee, he indicated there was funding there, it's taken care of. It's not committed. It's not committed for this. It may be there, it may not. And there's no alternative ways to address those issues.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wake, Representative Dollar, rise?
See if the gentleman would yield for a question.
Does the gentleman from Durham yield to the gentleman from Wake?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd be glad to yield after my comments after Representative Bishop's
He does
question.
not yield at this time. The gentleman from Durham has the floor to continue debating the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's extremely important that we know what's going on here. You know, as Republican primary voters left the polls, they said they had a 60% disapproval rate for their Republican leadership. And so now we've created this emergency fiction, and we're going to have an emergency solution that we haven't done our work on and passing it. Again, a one-day bill, one committee, an hour's hearing, 5 minutes for you to review it, and you're getting ready to vote it up or down based on floor debate without a fiscal note. I can't say that's responsible. I'm not sure any of you could say that's a responsible way for us to legislate. I know you feel that you have to vote a certain way, and many of us will have to, but we would have hoped we could have done better than this. Not economic development, not funding for our schools, not health care for our citizens. We came back to do this. It's really a shame that we did do this to the people of North Carolina. I'd ask that you vote against the bill.
For what purpose does